Okay, we received about 100 questions from alumni for this conversation. And thank you to everyone who submitted them during the registration process. I'm so proud to see how engaged and inquisitive my fellow UBC alumni are. So I'll try to get through as many questions as possible during the short program. And to do that, we're going to start with a few rapid fire questions where Professor Ono will only be allowed very brief answers. I don't know how I'm going to stop him if he goes on and on, but anyway. Then I will ask a handful that allow for more thoughtful explanation and conversation. But Professor Ono, before we get started with the questions, would you like to say a few words?
Well, first of all, good evening. It's really wonderful to see you. Some of you I've seen before. Some of you it's the very first time. I'm looking forward to getting to know you. I'm incredibly excited to be at UBC. This is one of the great universities in the world, and I and my wife and my kids have been really welcomed very warmly here, and I'm going to do everything I can to elevate your alma mater. It's really a distinct pleasure and honor to be able to serve you as the president of UBC.
Great, thank you. You ready for the rapid fire questions?
Ready.
All right. What is one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess?
I believe humility is one of the most important and foundational characteristics that leaders should possess.
In 3 words, how do you see the role of UBC alumni?
Spirit,
3 words. Spirit,
vision, and enthusiasm.
Okay. This question comes from an alumnus's kindergartner. What or where is heaven for you?
Heaven for me is playing my cello anywhere.
Okay, all right. I'm sure we can arrange for that to happen. We can make you, feel like heaven. What's a book that has had a profound impact on your outlook on life?
DNA, the language of God.
Oh, interesting. Did everyone write that down? So you can, when you meet
It's
with
an
them,
amazing
you can
book.
talk about it. Okay, so let's move into some broader questions. And we won't have time for all of the questions, but we'll try to get through as many as we can. What do you see as the fundamental purpose of UBC, and how do we maintain realistic, meaningful goals?
I think the fundamental purpose of UBC is to be a place that transforms the lives of primarily students, but also the faculty members that are world-class who choose this as their destination to create new knowledge. And the role of UBC is to create the best possible cocoon or incubator so that those transformations occur, and so that the dreams of those that choose UBC as their university or as their place of scholarship, that those dreams come true.
Very good. What do you see as the biggest challenges for UBC in the next 12 years, 10 to 12 years?
I would say that I view it more as opportunities.
Okay. What about in the next 12 months?
Oh,
Let's not give you 12 years. Let's give you 12 months. What do you think the biggest challenges will be in the next year?
The biggest priority for me right now is to work with the entire community, including alumni, to develop a strategic plan for the university. President Toop actually went through that exercise several years ago, and I had a chance to meet with him. He's a great leader, and also with Martha Piper herself. And they both said the university needs a roadmap, it needs a strategic plan. And I met with the deans of the university this morning, and they all agree. And several of the governors have pointed that out as one of the most important priorities. So in the first 12 months, working with the deans, the executive, the governors, and the alumni, and also external stakeholders, that's my top priority.
So it'll be interesting a year from now when you can unveil that strategic plan at our next AGM.
And I hope that prior to that, there'll be other opportunities to engage with alumni to get input.
Great. So UBC is unique in offering 2 different kinds of learning environments for students across 2 campuses, Vancouver and the Okanagan. Do you intend to integrate more cross-campus experiences between the 2 campuses?
I do, but I also think that the 2 campuses are already developing distinct focuses of both scholarship and teaching. There has been a growing number of faculties that are aligning their activities, and you probably know about alignment in applied science, but also in education. There's already a strong alignment in the distributed medical school system, as you know. And I think that in speaking with the provost of the Vancouver campus as well as Okanagan, we just had a few weeks ago a retreat of the executive. And there's good alignment between myself and the executive that growing those number of shared programs across the campuses is really a priority for the university. But I should also say that I think one of the opportunities of having two different campuses is really to also define distinguishing features of the two campuses. Not only programmatically, for example, in the Okanagan campus there is a burgeoning focus on design and digital media. There's some of that here as well, but much more design in the fine arts sense in Okanagan. There's traditional fine arts here in Vancouver, and I think finding areas where that differentiate them is also something that is very prudent. And finally, in both campuses, there is room to create more a crucible for innovation, if you will, and that's one of the focuses of our efforts this year is to really make innovation a priority, to make the transfer of intellectual property from our faculty to the workplace or in commercialization of technology. That's one of the priorities in Vancouver. But as you know, in the Okanagan as well, there's a real opportunity in terms of material science and the aerospace industry. So there are distinct ways that the two campuses can really contribute to the national innovation agenda.
Yeah, great. And you've been up there to visit a number of times already.
A number of times, and it's absolutely beautiful there. And I think that clearly, I participated in both Imagine Day in Vancouver, but also Create, which is their version of welcoming first-year students. And I could tell that there's an electricity and excitement in first-year students at both campuses, and they're slightly different. Yeah. And I like that. Yeah.
What would your vision be for our UBC alumni over the next 10 years? 10 years from now, where do you see UBC alumni?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that I've had really the good fortune of working with alumni associations in some of the institutions that you've mentioned. Yeah. And the Alumni UBC is really pretty remarkable. You know, I think it's one of the things that maybe I can bring in coming from the outside is to say that you know, what has happened here in a pretty short period of time in terms of Alumni UBC is astonishing. Yeah. I'm not surprised at all about how that review by GG&A has really commended what's happened here. Yeah. Not only is this facility magnificent, it would be the envy of every institution I have served. Yeah. But if you look at the technology with that interactive wall, I haven't been at any university that has that kind of functionality built into the center. Yeah. And I think two other assets are the vision and the strategic plan that you have created. It really is first class, and you know, there are many other institutions, some of which have been around for a couple of centuries, that are well behind where Alumni UBC is. So I hope that all of you realize the progress that's been made here in a very short period of time, and we're only going to go up even further. Yeah. But the biggest asset, more than the building and the plan and the technology, is really the passion of the people that I have worked with. You know, Barbara is a gem, Jeff is a gem, you're a gem, you're all gems. and that is the foundation upon which the future will be built.
And you're right, the GG&A report was, we were delighted to see the results of it because they were highly complimentary about the work that Jeff and his team and the board are doing with Alumni UBC. So in what ways will UBC improve in terms of postgraduate job support? Will there be more professional development offered to graduates?
Well, we heard some of that from Jeff's report, and I'll tell you that just before coming here, the students at UBC that I've really started to connect with invited me to the Nest
Oh, yes.
And they invited me to this place called The Pit. I don't know if you've been there.
Yeah. When I was at UBC.
It's better than any bar I've seen anywhere.
Not that you've necessarily seen a lot, but.
I've seen a lot of similar kinds
Okay.
of unions in different universities, and it's beautiful. That Nest is another amazing facility.
Fantastic.
And the students are first rate. But I wanted to answer a question about post-secondary and supportive university students. You know, the programs that are already in place are wonderful, and there's a thirst for that interaction with alumni on part of the university students. I met with students from the CUS, the Commerce Student Representative Group, and they would love to take advantage of that mentoring program of the 1,400 or so mentors. They just want 100. And they're putting together these teams of first and second year students with third and fourth year students together with an alumnus. So if you're interested in interacting with some fantastic students in teams, they really want to meet you, and I think that they would benefit. And I'll tell you, whenever I meet with a student, it energizes me, and I hope that you will volunteer to interact with the students that are at UBC today.
A tough question, but one that is often raised by people in the community and certainly by parents. How can UBC play a role in ensuring that the rising costs of tuition doesn't impede accessibility to public education?
You know, perhaps not surprisingly, I was asked the exact same question with the students that I was with just about an hour ago.
Did they have an answer for you?
Well, they expected me to have the answer.
Oh, okay.
And which is reasonable.
Yeah.
You know, the role of a leader is to serve the institution. And one of the sets of stakeholders that I have to serve are the students. Yes. And affordability and accessibility should be front and center in what I do as president and vice chancellor. So I'll tell you what I told them. And this is, I told them exactly what's happening, and that is that there are many ways that I can serve them and keep education affordable. One is to just take a look at the operations of the university, look at the expense side, and look for efficiencies that we can take advantage of as an executive and as administration to make sure that the university runs more efficiently, to hold down the expenses so that we don't need additional revenues. The other way that I can really make sure that we keep it as affordable as possible really is for me to be a communicator, to articulate the importance of UBC to both the provincial government and to the federal government, so that we get strong support that we deserve as an institution, so that we can keep the revenue side intact, so that any increase in costs can be minimized in terms of being paid from the students, on the backs of the students. So that's the second thing, is for me to be an ambassador and to do everything I can to attract new sources of revenue and resource to the institution, but also to maintain a very important support from, say, the province and the tri-councils and the federal government. The second way that I can keep it affordable. The third way is to really talk to foundations and friends and alumni and really tell the story of how one of the biggest gifts one can make is to make education possible for the next generation. And one of the things that I really enjoy doing, and I'll do it in front of you today, is that when I sometimes meet on the 70th floor of a tower in Manhattan with an alumnus and talk about their time at university, you know, it's not that uncommon that I'll meet somebody who will remember, go back 50 years or so, or 40 years or so, and reminisce about how they were a first-generation student in university, how they had, say, in their first or second term of their first or second year, that moment when there was a crisis in their family and they weren't sure how they were going to pay for tuition and books or food, for that matter. And they will tell me about how grateful they are to the institution and also to that faceless, nameless alumnus who gave to the university,
Yeah.
so that a faceless, nameless student that was in the same shoes that they were in 40 or 50 years ago, that they would then have the resources to continue with their education. And it's not uncommon for a very, very established person to, when they tell that story, for them to burst into tears when they're talking to me.
Yeah.
And so the other way I can really go to bat for the current student is to remind foundations and alumni what it was like when they were that age, and to encourage them to pay it forward, just like somebody did for them.
For them. Well, I'm sure with your passion about and for higher education that Barbara's going to be taking you out on many, many calls, so look forward to hearing the results of those.
Sure.
The UBC student population is growing dramatically. How will quality of education and research be upheld and enhanced, especially at the undergraduate level?
Yeah. You know, I think some people feel that if a university grows too large, that it's not as easy to ensure that the student experience is best of class.
Yeah.
I think that it's eminently possible to do so. It requires that the executive, that the president, the board, and the vice president of student affairs, that the entire team thinks very seriously and comprehensively about all the touch points in the life of a student. From the very moment that they apply, for how you actually treat them, how you make them feel, what their halls of residence are like, what the commute might be like for a commuter student, what it might be like to be a commuter student and not have a hall of residence to call home. And one of the things that I've been incredibly impressed by is that UBC has thought about most of those things. It doesn't have everything solved, and one of the things I'm trying to instill in my team is continuous improvement.
Yeah.
We're getting better, but we can always get even better.
Yeah.
And the motivation to do so is that if you do that, then the student experience will get better and better, and that's why we're here, is to make their experience a wonderful experience. Not only a learning experience, but a place where they can grow as human beings and citizens. And so, to answer your question, this is a large school, not the largest by any means, but an example of what the UBC team is doing to make it a good experience. There are these collegia that have opened up in some of the new residence halls on campus. And you know, I've been at other very large universities, and they haven't even thought of creating a home away from home for the commuter student. And so if you go into the new halls of residence, they have places with kitchens and flat screen TVs and foosball tables and comfy sofas to give to the commuter student the same kind of place to congregate and to interact with faculty that a residential student has. And so that's just one example of the kind of thought that the Vice President of Student Affairs and the Chief Financial Officer, the VP of Administration, that we're really thinking continuously about how to make the student experience better. So that's how you can actually make a larger school feel much smaller. And I spent a lot of time thinking about how to create a micro community in a larger community. If you can connect each and every student with a micro community, whether it's a Quidditch club or whether it's the rugby club, then they have a place that they can call their home in a larger organization.
I think that's so important. My daughter graduated from here 20 years ago, and she was a commuter student, and she didn't have that sense of this being her home, because she'd just go home after being in classes all day.
In many ways, it's even better, because when I was there, I had dinner with the students, and it was a very nice dinner. They cooked it with the individuals that were in the collegiate, wonderful lasagna, and what was amazing is that there were faculty there across different disciplines. And so it almost felt a little bit like Oxford or Cambridge, where the faculty are there together with the students having a meal, and that's the extra special dimension that makes the experience special.
I want to ask you personal question. You've been very open with your mental health struggles. What initiatives would you like to implement at UBC to address mental illness and promote mental health for all in the UBC community?
Well, it is true, and there has been quite a bit of press attention when I actually spontaneously spoke about challenges during my young adulthood and youth. And surprisingly, across Canada and across the United States, there's been sort of a spontaneous level of support at various levels. I was invited to the White House by President Obama to participate in a panel in terms of wellness and mental health and what can be done at the federal level. I'm involved in something with the Universities Canada where we're thinking about what exists not only here at UBC but in universities across Canada and taking a look at what occurs in best-of-class institutions, what level of counselors there are, what kinds of support services exist within the halls of residence, how to train faculty members, professors, to see signs that a student might actually be going through some difficulties or challenges. It's nothing to be ashamed of.
Right.
We need to break the silence, remove the stigma, because we're not embarrassed when a youngster or an adult is dealing with cancer. We're there to support them. There's no stigma associated with someone having juvenile diabetes. Mental well-being is impacted by biological processes and genetics, and we should be just as supportive, if not more supportive, of youngsters that are dealing with those sorts of challenges. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and if we form a web of support, we can help them through, and that's what we ought to be doing. I am so proud of what UBC has done. You may have heard that as a university, we have invested $2.5 million more, not through fees, but through careful analysis of our budget, to double the amount of counselors that are available for our students here. To give you an idea of the prevalence of these issues, which is growing actually over time, we determined in Cincinnati that half of the students at some point during their university career would be going through some sort of crisis, some very severe, some that were transient, but half of the students needed some sort of support. And I think UBC is ahead of the curve, and I'm happy to announce that it's very likely that we'll augment that even further this year.
Well, you really are to be congratulated with taking a leadership role and being so open with it, because it is an issue that is growing in Canada, growing around the world, and so I really thank you for.
And every family is affected by it, and you know, we all have loved ones, and we all hope and pray that somebody at a school or university will detect someone's going down, and if you can really reach out and support them, you can transform a life. You can save a life. And that's what's powerful about what is happening at UBC.
That's great. Final question. And I mean, you've only been here a month, so you might not even be thinking about this yet, but what would you like to leave as your legacy from your term as president?
Well, you know, lots of presidents are asked that question. I've been asked that question before at
But you've probably been
Cincinnati.
in the position longer than a month when you were asked that.
But the answer is actually, it's pretty simple, because I've been a president before of a large university. And some presidents will say a beautiful new student union, or a renovated stadium, or X number of endowed professorships. And I think all of that is secondary to a legacy of that affects the entire culture of the community, if you will. You know, the most transformational thing anyone can bring as a leader is making the community stronger. Because if you can build community between the alumni and the faculty and the students, that's a legacy that transcends buildings and chaired professorships. So to answer your question, the legacy I would like to leave is a UBC community that's even more tight-knit, where people are helping each other, and where pride grows. And if all of that happens, everything else follows.
Well, knowing your past history and what people write about you from the other universities that you've been president of, I have no doubt that you will achieve that. So thank you very much, Professor Ono, for sharing your thoughts with us and being so forthright and open in terms of answering the questions that that alumni did us.